great to catch up with you online. We've been busily organising the gig next week, so we actually have some time to check in and chat. Can you tell us a little bit about your solo piano launch? Because obviously as part of Lilith Night at Sydney International Women's Jazz Festival next week, 7th of November at Foundry 616, you will be doing a short support act at the beginning, and that will be the launch of your new album. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that?
Opening the show, I'll be doing a short set, which is my new album, which is called So What Bark. Basically, it's an idea I had during lockdown, which was started about 8 months ago, as we all know. And it's an idea I'd kind of been thinking about for ages. I'm a piano teacher, partially. I do lots of things, but one of the things I do is that I teach piano. And so often I end up teaching Bach, of course. And I love Bach. And so often what I hear myself telling people is, what I hear myself telling students is, I know it seems really heavy to start with, but as you keep practicing it and as you get into it, you will learn to love it. And so I really love Bach in all his guises. But and I'm also an improvising musician, and I'm also a composer. So I've had this idea in the back of my head for a long time to do a series of improvisations on Bach and basically plan hardly anything, just like see what comes out. So during lockdown, I thought, well, one of the things that I can still do is get into a studio. You know, I was all masked up and everybody was masked up, and, you know, it was just me and the sound engineer in the studio. We were 4 meters apart most of the time. And I just ended up recording this album. It's called So What Bark. And the whole concept of basically using melodic and harmonic motifs from various piano, keyboard Bach pieces, and using it as the basis for a long improvisation. Yeah, so I called it So What Bach. I'm just going to read you out the blurb. This album is a reinterpretation of 6 J.S. Bach piano classics. The So What chord consists of 3 perfect fourth intervals followed by a major third interval. It originates from Bill Evans' Amen response to the head of Miles Davis' tune So What. Bach would have loved it. So it's kind of like a reference to the So What chord. And I do end up using quite a lot of that chord in the improvisations. So that's pretty much what it is. It seems to have got a great response. I mean, the thing about Bach is that everyone's heard of Bach, and what I find happens is what I end up doing live is often slightly different to the CD. But that, you know, that's the nature of it. I also ended up transcribing the improvisations, and they are going to be published by Wirripang. So I'm going to be selling the book of sheet music as well, and it's also available actually from now on Wirripang's website. So that's the first thing I'm doing that night. And
great. So you've been very busy this year, Keyna. It's been a very busy year for you. How you put out quite a few albums this year. You're sort of on a roll.
I'm on a roll right now, yeah. I mean, what I find happens in music is if you don't kind of take control of your artistic life, you can kind of end up drifting along and not really doing much, especially during a pandemic. So I thought, well, this is a great time because at least some studios shut down, some of the big ones shut down, but I have a great working relationship over many years with A Sharp Studios in Riverwood. They didn't shut down. I think they shut down for a little bit, but they kind of opened up again, you know, under, you know, observing all the rules and all that. So I ended up recording 3 albums in the last couple of months, and that was really great. It's not like I wrote the albums or anything. It's kind of ideas that I'd had for some time. So So What Bark, and also the debut album of my duo with Indigenous didgeridoo player Gumroy Newman. We're actually launching that tonight at Lazy Bones in Marrickville, called Chasing Stars to the Mother Tree. So we have been working together for nearly 2 years now, and so it's all ideas we've kind of already had. We just had to get in the studio and record it, and then also second album of a quartet that performs my space music as well.
Yeah,
so, just getting busy because there's not much going on. I feel I find it very hard to stay still. I just want to keep doing stuff, and I find the best way of doing that is to create deadlines. And then when I have a deadline, I will get it done. If I don't have a deadline, I may never do anything, but if I create that deadline, right, that's when it's going to be recorded. Just got to get on with it. And that's how I find I keep things rolling, because I think a lot of musicians have actually done nothing at all for 8 months, and I can't handle that. I just can't handle it.
Yeah.
I actually ended up writing heaps of music as well. I'm writing a lot of music. So actually, it's been quite a productive time. I'm very keen to get out there and perform. Though I have performed a few times in online live streamed gigs in the last couple of months, and also I'm doing a gig tonight, and also the one that we're doing, which I'm super excited about. So there've been a few things here and there, but certainly no traveling. I mean, I had two gigs at Mona this year, 2 gigs at Melbourne Recital Centre. I mean, it's actually going to be quite a big year for traveling, but all of that shut down. But I think certainly as a composer, you can always be getting on with stuff, and so that's what I've been trying to do.
Very good. It sounds like a very healthy attitude towards everything. And speaking of deadlines, obviously we have a deadline next week on the 7th of November at Foundry 616. And of course, the details for that gig will be below in the description box, so people can click on the link to get some of the last tickets. Obviously, because of the coronavirus, we have regulations. But it was great that SEMA has been able to make the festival actually go ahead this year. So we're all quite excited about that. It makes people perhaps a little bit more hopeful again. So limited tickets, we're limited at about 45 tickets. And we've sold quite a few already. So, but if you would like to get in, definitely the link below, and you can book those online. So as part of Lilith Night, obviously Lilith Night has been going now for about 2 years, and it's a project that I started originally with another colleague while I was in Europe. We met in Poland, and then that sort of developed from there. And then this year we've been able to expand the lineup with more fantastic improvising musicians, which is great. That's allowing us sort of a greater scope to bring in more styles of music this year. And so, Keyna, you're the pianist and flautist, obviously, for the group, but you're also writing a couple of pieces. So we'll be playing a couple of your pieces in this international showcase of women composers. And the 2 pieces we've got from you, if I'm correct, because there's too much information in my head, Wormhole and Callisto. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about those 2 pieces that people will hear next week on Saturday, on the 7th of November.
Sure. So Callisto is about Callisto, which is a moon of Jupiter. It's one of the largest moons of Jupiter. It's heavily cratered. So I have basically literally looked at NASA photos of Callisto and tried to replicate the jagged cratered edges on the music. So the actual melody is quite angular. There's a lot of time signature change. Well, there's a couple of time signature changes. And it kind of evades a sense of like central tonality. But then there's a free improvised section as well. So it's actually part of the Australian jazz reel book. It's got a head and then improvised section. So that's one of the pieces that that we're going to be playing, which I'm really excited about. The other piece we're going to be playing is called Wormhole, and Wormhole is basically so there's a spoken poem to start with, and then it's a structured ensemble improvisation around the concepts of a wormhole. So obviously a wormhole is quite theoretical astronomy at the moment. It's very similar to a black hole. So I've kind of used some of the kind of scientific ideas to inform the piece. It's also got accompanied by open source images and sounds from space, which are originally from NASA, but put through a spectrograph and made audible by astronomer Paul Francis, who's based in Melbourne. So yeah, I've got space sounds, space images. I find space incredibly evocative and inspiring, and it's just a never-ending source of material for music. And what I find it quite therapeutic as well, because I think it's really good to remind ourselves how small we are in the universe and how much bigger things are going on around us at all times, and the reason that it's good to remind yourself of that is that you start appreciating, actually life is pretty good for most people. I'm alive, I'm breathing, I got to,
It's always
you
a
know,
bonus.
dream. Sorry.
It's always a bonus to be alive, right?
Exactly. You know, it's like there's so much more amazing and more awesome things out there in the universe. So I find it quite therapeutic to write about this stuff, and it helps me. Yeah, it helps me day to day.
Great. And because what I found interesting is you actually did your master's thesis on astronomy and music. I think it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting as well. I mean, it certainly has been a topic of inspiration for composers through the ages. I mean, there was Pythagoras' music of the spheres, and the full moon and moons and stars have always been an inspiration for composers. But specifically for me, more recently, I think it was about 8 years ago that NASA released the SoundCloud collection of space sounds. So this is a whole range of different sounds from space. So some of them are actual microphone recordings from spaceships. So that and also sometimes the audio. So for example, the audio from the moon landing I use in my compositions and some of my improvisations. But there's also actual radio signals have been coming from the rings of Saturn. So in the Wormhole composition that we're going to be performing in LILITH Night, that at the end of it, there's radio signals from the rings of Saturn, which I find really interesting. They can't actually explain, no one's kind of have an explanation for why they exist, but they do exist, and they're very beautiful. So there's that. So there's radio signals, there's actual audio, and then there's also spectrograph data, which has to be put through, electromagnetic waves that have to be put through a spectrograph to be made audible. So I use that as well in my compositions. Yeah, so NASA brought that out about 7 or 8 years ago, and certainly when I did my thesis, not that many other composers that I could find were using them. But they are an amazing resource. They're very beautiful sounds. Some of them sound a little bit like whale noises, but there's very evocative and beautiful. And yeah, there's a lot of kind of space for writing more music around that stuff.
Yeah, great. It sounds very interesting. I'm looking forward to it. And of course, Sydney International Women's Jazz Festival is celebrating women in music. So the purpose of all of these interviews is obviously to try to speak to as many female composers as possible that will be featuring on the 7th of November. So I just wanted to ask you, this topic of women in music has obviously progressed a lot in the past 5 years. It's always been a topic, but has progressed quite a lot in the past 5 years. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit about your perspective or experience of this topic in your career?
Okay, yeah. So I think in general, music is a very, very difficult field. A lot of people end up giving up as they get older. It's only the real diehards that stay in it, whatever gender you are. But I think that there is some discrimination for sure. A lot of areas are still a bit of a boys' club, but I find that at the same time, if you are confident about what you do and you are confident to lead your own ensembles, and choose carefully the people that you work with. I mean, that's the key. You want to be choosing the people you work with, make sure you're very comfortable with them and all that. Then I don't feel like in the last few years since I've been leading my own ensembles and developing my solo work, I don't feel like there's really been anything standing in my way at all. But yeah, sure, I did have some bad experiences a while ago, but I think that was when I was younger and just didn't. I think a lot of the time, yeah, certainly when you're young and possibly more when you're a woman, you don't realize how much kind of power you do actually have to like leave a situation or just go and start your own thing.
Yeah, I think this is a key point. And the other thing that you just touched on is that since you've been leading your own projects, and I think this is a point that has been picked up by all of the women that I have spoken to. So generally women aren't in the creative music scene or improvised music scene in larger cities, if we're talking about New York or Europe or other places. But I know from other women in Australia, also some scenes here, women generally aren't employed as sidemen. This is the thing. It's generally up to the female to create the project, promote the project, etc. And obviously, if you're in the driver's seat, you're able to control a little bit more. The other point you brought up is choosing who you work with. It's a very important point. Sometimes it's quite difficult, obviously, if you've never worked with the person before. There's always a first time experience.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, I think all of that is correct. And I think to a degree, it's human nature. I mean, you end up wanting to work with people that are kind of like you in some way. And I think sometimes there's differences between, massive generalization here, obviously, and not everyone fits into this. But there's differences in the way that men and women work, and sometimes they might rub against each other in the wrong way, not intending to, and then misinterpreting each other. So I think that can happen a lot as well. But I think like once you kind of take a step back and start kind of just start trying to kind of take the reins and kind of like really figure out what you want to what do you want to achieve, then things are much easier. And like I said, I don't feel like anything's really been standing in my way. I have got 6-year-old twins.
So another thing I wanted to ask you about. So I've been talking to a lot of women composers also with children this time. Our last program that we focused on for Lilith Night in 2019, the statistics were we only had about 2 pieces in that whole program that were written by women with children. And this year I've tried to focus or promote a lot more music by women with children to sort of show that. It's been a topic, it's slowly changing now. I think more freelance women are starting to have children, but it's definitely been a topic in the past. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and also if your routine changed or your music changed after you had children, and how did you cope with melding the two?
Yeah, so everything changed dramatically in ways that I could never ever have foreseen. Obviously, having children is a massive, massive thing, and having twins is kind of like times 2. So I think what happens with a lot of women is they completely stop everything for a little while, sometimes a long while, sometimes they never get back to it. Sometimes it's 10 years, sometimes 20 years, sometimes everything stops. But I think if you really, really love what you do, you will find a way to get back to it somehow. What made it make sense with me and my partner Tully is that I figured out really quickly I didn't want to be a full-time mum. I actually went back to work at 6 months. I'm very lucky to have very supportive parents that live nearby and do look after the kids quite a lot. But even with that, you just got to get used to having very little sleep, catching up on sleep whenever you can. It was like 10 weeks a night. We were on the point of nervous breakdown for the first 6 months easily, and then eventually it got to like 6 hours, and we were happy, for maybe a year after that. But and then eventually I could catch up in the afternoon a bit and stuff. I mean, the main thing is the sleep, but it's also all the emotional stuff. I mean, I love my kids very much, but it's extremely hard, and I think a lot of women do just completely give up on whatever they do. But because I went back to work, because Tully was very, very supportive. We're very much a team. We're very much like 50-50, nearly everything. I was able to get on with what I did. And the thing is, because the actual process of having children was so life-changing and so kind of awesome, but also incredibly difficult, it actually helped me realign my priorities and what I wanted to achieve musically. And I stopped worrying about stupid things that I used to worry about. And I just thought, well, I've had all this time off. My son nearly died at birth. Life is just so much more immediate and so much more it's kind of like helps you realize what's important. And I started thinking, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want. I don't care about what's good for my career or whatever. I mean, I do, but it's not my priority. I just want to actually do what I'm passionate about and just follow that through to wherever it takes me, and just try and have fun along the way. That's really all that matters to me. So I started and because I was in that state of mind, I started having ideas about what kind of ensembles I wanted to create and stuff. And then it actually became much more exciting. So I think for me, it just kind of realigned my priorities. But I think when you're doing something that you're really passionate about, you want to keep doing it, and nothing's really going to stop you. I mean, I'm getting up at 4 a.m. like half the week probably. I mean, I actually find the very early morning hours are my really window of being really productive, and then I might catch up, because I mean the kids are at school now, but I might catch up a little bit kind of early afternoon. I do a lot of teaching as well. So my bread and butter money is very much piano and flute, private teaching. I have about 35, 40 students. So that's kind of how I've made it all work. But I mean, I look around me in my suburban area, and I think a lot of women, there are a few completely stay-at-home mums, which I respect. You know, that's what feels right for you. That's totally fine. But a lot of the time they take at least a year, 2 years, oftentimes 4 or 5 years, something like that. But when we're taking that much time off, of course, then it's hard to get back into it.
Yeah. I think that's a point that was made by a lot of the women that I spoke to as well. It's quite difficult to get back in.
Can be, yeah. So I had a big time off playing piano because I had a very, very difficult pregnancy. So the end of the pregnancy was crazy, and then with the operation, ICU, of course they came premature anyway. I mean, not as premature as they would have done, so that was good, but still premature. We spent a lot of time in hospital. So I didn't do anything at all for probably 11 or 12 months, right? But then when I got back into it, I found I hadn't lost my skills. I was really worried I'd lose the physical side of playing and stuff. I hadn't. So I found actually what happened, because I'd had this life-changing experience, my playing style changed in that it actually felt like I had more depth to my playing. I had more depth to my compositions. Music made sense to me more. I use it very much as therapy. And so for me, it's just about expressing myself and finding that perfect sound. And I find when I listen to flute recordings from 10 years ago, they're so much thinner than the sound I make now. And I feel like I've got a real kind of depth and vibrancy and groundedness to my sound now that I never had before. So for me, I feel like my career's taken off, but I feel like it's partially because I've been very, very lucky. I mean, women just end up bringing their kid along to whatever they do, which is another way of managing it as well. That's very difficult with twins though, because I mean, we're just running around everywhere. Like you couldn't even more than about 2 minutes before you had to stop one of them from climbing up the wall.
So, and the other thing that we'll just touch on briefly before time gets away, the other thing that we'll be performing on the 7th of November is obviously a piece by Lilith Night that we've directed, and this is with electronics by Sian Lindsay, and I'll be doing an interview with Sian a little bit later this week, and that's based on obviously Julia Gillard's famous misogyny speech, but a speech heard as it's never been heard before. Once again,
I'm so excited about that. I think it's amazing what she's done with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I just got back the second cut of electronics today. So that'll be, I think, super interesting. And we'll see where that goes with lots of improvisation, but other things coming in. So we've got a big week ahead of us and a lot of deadlines coming up. So the 7th of November at Foundry 616, the info is below. And of course, links to Keyna's music are also found below, and Lilith Night's website. Great, Keyna, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thanks for having the concept of Lilith Night, and thank you for performing my composition. I think it was in Poland and South Australia and maybe somewhere else, I'm not sure. But anyway, that was really fantastic, and really appreciate everything you've done. And the concept is really brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to the show.
Great, wonderful. I am too. And of course, we have a lot of other international women on the bill. So this year, there's not very much travel happening. So the festival is quite happy that we have an international program that we're presenting for audiences at Foundry 616. Thanks very much, Keyna. See you. Bye.